Okay, well class, welcome to the TDD tutorial. I know that in class I didn't give us a lot of opportunity for you guys to go through exactly what it is to do TDD style development. So I am hoping that through this sequence of tutorial videos I will take you through a project which you can download on GitHub and go through the process required in a TDD fashion of completing the project and making it work. Um, this is in practice, so it's possible that there could be a couple of things that I have left out, but I will do my best to make this as clear as possible. I'm also going to limit most of the videos to just small sequences to allow you to be able to repeat and digest the information that's been given you, so that as you go through this, you are able to become better TDD developers. So the project we're going to complete today is the Pascal's triangle. Now, you are already familiar with the problem, having looked at it in class before. But today we'll actually go ahead and implement an entire application that will run this for us and give us the results. So the application is broken into two separate projects. We have the actual application in Pascal's triangle, and then we have a second class library that will contain all of our unit tests. Now, under the unit test, we have two main things that we will need to take care of. We have our program test right here, which when completed should allow us to have our program file be filled out correctly. We also have our triangle calculator test, which is the class that will be used to calculate Pascal's triangle, and the implementation for that will be found here. Okay, so in this first sequence we will start with the program tests. Okay, so the first test that we will want to run is our run program. Now, we want to make sure that we follow the appropriate arrange, act, assert, and also that we go within a red-green refactor fashion. So we want to make sure our tests that we write fail first to make sure the functionality is not there, add the functionality to make them green, and then if we need to, we refactor our code to make it better as we go along. Okay. So our first test that we are working on here is run program should return an exit code 1 when the user input is not a number. Okay. So what we're going to expect here, right, to go ahead and set our arrange, we're going to say that our mark input output, okay, that expects that when our read line is called to get information from the user, that it will return something that is not a number. Okay? And I want to go ahead and make sure that my const int expected is going to be set to 1. Okay, now we've made our arrangements. Let's go ahead and act upon our program. So we will go ahead and call our program, which is it's called run program under the program. Right? And here we will want to go ahead and pass in our mock input output and our mock triangle calculator that needs to be there. We will get our actual response, and then we will assert that our expected value is equal to the actual value. Right? Response, or the exit code when a user valid input is 0 or 1. Okay, good. So at this point, we've created our first test. We'll save it, and then using the resharper tool, we click on this button and say run, which will actually execute that test for us, which should fail. Great. We fail with the not implemented exception. It's fine. It still is failing, which is what we want. So now we can actually go back to our program, and let's go ahead and at least add the first part of the functionality that we need. And so we're basically going to have a input equals console.readline, so we can get whatever the input is from the user. And we can do if int.tryparse, input, right? And we need a variable to out it to. Okay. Forgot the out keyword. And we will do a not because we want try parse to fail, and if it fails, then we'll go ahead and return an error code of 1. Okay. If we go back to our test and we rerun this, we should in fact see this execute successfully. Okay. Now let's go ahead and work on the next method, which is when the run program is called, it should pass the entered value to triangle calculator's print triangle. So we actually want to expect that what we get from the user is passed into the appropriate method. Okay. So again, we'll set up our expectations, which is that our mark triangle dot expect x and x.print triangle will take in the value that we want. So let's say our constant int expected is going to be equal to 10. Okay, and we'll pass that in here. Right? And we also need to make sure that with our mock input output, right, that when the read line is called here, okay, that it is going to return our expected output as a string, of course, since read line returns a string. So that has set up everything we need for this to go ahead and execute. Okay, we will now go ahead and call program.runProgram, pass in our mock input output and our mock triangle. Now the difference with this version or this test compared to the other is I'm expecting that certain interaction has occurred, not that any set value was returned. And so rather than actually doing an assertion between two values like I did in this test using this assert.requal, I will do an assertion on my mock object, specifically my triangle calculator, to verify that my expectation succeeded, or in other words, that method was called with the appropriate value. So we can say mock triangle calculator that verify all expectations. Okay. Now if we go ahead and run this one, we can see that this one also fails. Okay, and we know it fails because it said that we wanted it to return something and it didn't. Okay, so let's go to the program and let's go ahead and make this work. Okay, so at this point we want to go ahead and do triangle calculator dot print triangle and passing in the converted number that was given us. Okay, so that test actually failed when it should have succeeded, which means I have done something wrong in my code. Let's go back and see what else is wrong in my program. Oh, if we notice right here, I am actually using the console call directly, which through this execution will always return nothing, which is not a number. So I need to actually change this to use my mock object that's sending in my mock behavior to my test. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. One other thing that I know will happen is this exception is going to be thrown right here, and I don't actually want that to occur. So instead, I'm going to have this return a default value of -1 right now, so the exception is not thrown. So now, if we run this, great, we can see that we are actually successful in the way that we would hope. Okay, on to the next one. This one is saying that if print triangle throws an exception, that we want to make sure that we return 1 and that the exception does not propagate out. So in this case, I'm going to put in a expectation that an exception will occur. Right, so I'm going to do mocking input output, right? And this time I'm going to do a stub. The difference between a stub and a mock or an expect is that in this case it's just going to return it, but it's not going to keep track of that actually being executed. And I want this to go ahead and return some valid number in a string form. Okay. Now with mock triangle, however, I'm actually going to say that when this is called, regardless of what it's called with, whoops, expect x dot print triangle, right? And in this case, I don't want to be rigid with the value before because I'm not testing that it's passed. I want to test that when this is called, an exception occurs. In this case, I'll do arg, right, of an int, because it's a generic type, dot is dot anything. Right? So whenever this method is called with anything, I'm going to have it throw a new exception. Okay? Whoop. I actually don't want that one. I just want exception. Okay? Then we will go ahead and do our act, right? We actually need to make sure that our expected code is going to be 1. Our actual will equal program.run program. And we can say at this point that we want to verify that that triangle was, executed the way it was supposed to. Now if we run this right now, this should fail, give us an exception of the system exception was thrown. That's fantastic. That's what we want. So we'll go ahead and fix this. We'll do a try, right? Catch. And we'll have this just return 1. Okay. So if we go back to our test, oh, that's fine. That one's not implemented. That wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to run this one. So if we run that one explicitly, we can see that it is successful. Now we have one more, which is the last one that's not implemented on the run program end. Let's go ahead and fill this one in. This one says it should return execute of 0 when print triangle doesn't throw an exception. In other words, when print triangle works successfully. Alright, so in this case, I am going to do constant expected, which is equal to 0. I will also do my mock input output .stub, my read line call again, to return some valid number. Okay. My actual is equal to program.runProgram. And this can take my mocking input output, my mocking triangle calculator. Right. And then this will call, assert are equal my expected and my actual. A successful run should have exit code 0. Okay. If we run this, it's going to fail, which is exactly what we want. Great, so now let's go to the program, and we know that this last statement right here should now return a 0 instead. Great. So we can tell that all of these have now successfully completed. Again, we'll rerun all of them just to make sure we didn't cause any other bugs to pop up while we were making this change. But at this point now, we have our program that runs the way we would expect, right? And we have tests to prove that. Now, I don't have any tests making this a more user-friendly UI. For example, printing out a message of enter the row to print to, or printing out an error message if you didn't put in a number. But I will go ahead and leave that task up to you at this point. And this completes the first video. Once you have gone through and added those other tests, as well as the code to make those tests so that your program has a nice user interface, we will move on to the next test.